Officer Eric Voorhees. Thank you both for joining us here tonight. I also want to thank council staff, Kevin McCain from my staff and Andy McDonald, CTV, and members of the public for taking time to tune in tonight to learn more about the budgeting process for the Department of Public Utilities and Building and Zoning Services. The purpose of this hearing is obviously to review and comment on the mayor's 2023 proposed operating budgets for these two departments. This hearing is live streamed on CTV and Columbus City Council's Facebook and YouTube page. This video of this hearing will also be posted on City Council's YouTube page following this event. With that, we'll go ahead and get things started. So I will turn the mic over to Public Utilities Deputy Director John Lee for his presentation. Mr. Lee, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Councilmember Dorans and members of Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Department of Public Utilities 2023 operating budget. Our total operating budget for 2023 is $751 million. This represents an increase of 4.9% above the 2022 budget. For the 2023 budget, we have continued efforts to hire additional personnel. We don't have very many program expansions, but we are seeing some increased spending for supplies, services, and equipment, which I'll get into, which are driven largely by inflation and price adjustments. Quick overview, with our budget of $751 million, this covers 4 divisions, which I'll go over, plus our director's office. Just a little bit of background, we continue to serve 1.3 million customers here in the city and the surrounding suburban region. We're focused in 2023 on continuing to hire critical personnel and maintain our core service levels. I'll talk a little bit about each division, and one component of that those divisions is debt service, which is a large component which helps us pay back for the capital projects we have as part of our $4.1 billion capital plan. The revenue to support our budget is from our rate increases. City Council recently passed our 2023 rate increases. This provides needed revenue to support the budget and capital plan. First off, I'll start with our director's office budget. Compared to 2022, our budget's increasing 8% for our director's office budget. Large part of this budget is our call center. This call center is an operation where we receive customer calls, billing questions, and we have a lot of staff there. One of the items that we're looking at replacing is our cubicles. It's not been replaced in over 20 years. Our director's office budget is a shared service, and so each one of the divisions has a percentage of their budget that supports our director's office. You can see here that we've got multiple sections under the director's office, anywhere from fiscal to computer services, sustainability, customer service, and permits. In 2023, as mentioned, we're going to continue to hire customer service representatives in our call center to reduce delays on our phones and improve our service. We're also looking at the implementation of a new work order management system. That is a system where we process all of our work orders at our plants and our facilities and our service requests. A large part of the director's office budget on contracted services supports our banking contracts at $2.3 million, as well as our bill print services. Moving on to our water division budget. Overall, our water division budget is $230 million. It represents a 1% increase above the 2022 budget. I have it broken down here for water between operations and maintenance expenses and debt service. You can see that debt service is around 46% of the overall budget at $106 million budgeted in 2023. We also see increases in material supplies and capital equipment. Our division of water serves regional customers, and we have 3 water plants and a large water distribution system. In 2023, the lion's share of our expenses on our operations and maintenance support our treatment plants. 3 treatment plants, the budget for those is around $43 million. And our water distribution system, which maintains lines out in our community, water lines in our community, is around $13 million. One area that we've seen increased costs, particularly in 2023 and 2022, we're planning for in 2023, is our chemical costs. Chemical costs have increased significantly over the past year, and we're budgeting close to a 16% increase compared to 2022. Capital equipment, we've had some deferrals in capital equipment over the recent years, so we are seeing a close to 23% increase for capital equipment, which will allow us to provide needed heavy equipment for our distribution centers. Sewers and drains budget summary. Overall, our total budget for 2023 is $332 million. This represents close to 7% increase above 2022 levels. We have seen large increases in materials, supplies, and services and capital. A little bit different from the water side. You can see there that operations and maintenance expenses is around 38% of the total budget, where debt service is around 62%. Our Division of Sewers and Drains operates a very large sewer collection system throughout the city. We have 2 wastewater plants as well as a composting facility. Our suburban customers that we serve total around 25. Some more detail on the Division of Sewers and Drains, specifically to supplies and materials. We are seeing an increase and planning for an increase of around 11%. Chemical increases are a factor on the sewers and drains budget, not so much on the water, like it is on the water side, but there are chemicals that we feed to treat wastewater. We're also seeing some increases in lab supplies and gases, natural gases, other supplies used to maintain our facilities. Contracted services is also budgeted higher than 2022, around 14% higher. These are related to our facilities and maintenance contracts, some of our environmental cleanup and disposal contracts, and some of our equipment with an operator contract. We're also seeing some increases in electricity. The debt service on sewers and drains is related to many of our consent order decree compliance projects, such as Blueprint and some of the major tunnels we have going on in the system. As far as our stormwater budget, our stormwater section is charged with preventing and addressing any kind of stormwater pollution and preventing that in our rivers and streams. Overall, though, compared to 2022, we're looking at a $43.2 million budget, less than a 1% increase over 2022 levels. The large part of our budget, as you can see there in 2023, is about $25.4 million in the services line. Those services are mainly for street sweeping services, which DPS performs for us, Department of Public Service, and also a reimbursement for one of our internal divisions, our Sewer Maintenance and Operations Center. They provide storm cleaning services that the stormwater section does not have the resources for. So that's why that's such a large amount in their overall budget. They do have a need for some more vehicles for the inspectors out in the field, and we are seeing additional debt service over the years as our capital plan for the Division of Stormwater has been increasing. Over the next 6 years, our CIP is around $275 million for stormwater. Right now, we have 8 vacant positions that we hope to fill in 2023, and we're going to continue our compliance with our MS4 permit in 2023 as well. Also, as far as maintaining some of our green infrastructure, we have a contract, and we're continuing that contract for $330,000 to clean out some of our bioretention basins and ensure water quality. Finally, the final area of our total $751 million budget is our power division. Our power division's budget is $107 million roughly in 2023. It's about a 7.7% increase. Some of the larger increases are associated with capital equipment. For the Division of Power is largely driven by the need to purchase transformers. Transformers right now have experienced some delays as far as putting orders in and getting those transformers, but there's a continual need for transformers to prevent outages for our customers, making sure that we have those in stock. We're also increasing some of our heavy equipment needs, some of our specialized types of bucket trucks and line trucks, so we're proposing $1.3 million for those pieces of heavy equipment. When you look at our overall budget for the Division of Power, 66 million in our materials and supplies line is driven primarily by our purchase power agreement, which we purchase power, wholesale power, and then resell it to our customers. Of that 66 million, 59 million is for purchase power. And with that, Councilmember Dorns, that concludes my presentation for Department of Public Utilities.
Thank you, Deputy Director Lee. This is normally where we get into questions from the public, but we did not have anyone fill out any speaker slips for tonight. So I'm going to move into a couple of questions, and we've been doing this for many years now. I always like to try and channel some questions from the public in addition to those that council would like to pose to the administration as we think through this budgetary process. So one of the things is that we actually talked about this at the rate hearing a few weeks ago. But can you talk about the steps that the department is taking with regard to its low-income discount program and senior discount program for the department, and how that impacts the department's overall budgetary situation? I know it's something that, again, we talked about a few weeks ago, but it has a direct impact on the budget here itself, and just want to give an opportunity for the department to talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. Our low-income programs are very important to the department and City Council and the Mayor's office. And currently, we're continuing our low-income discount program. One new component in order to provide a little bit of relief in 2023 is a credit program. And that credit program will those that qualify for the low-income discount will also qualify for the credit, which should be around $50 to $60, which will help offset the estimated cost of that increase. So our program is not really changing in general. Right now, people can qualify for low-income and senior, and you can get a waiver of your fixed service charge, and you can also get, as a senior, and you can get a 20% reduction on your commodity charge. The total cost for those programs ranges between $800,000 to roughly $1 million when you look at all the relief we're providing. But we're also, throughout the pandemic, and we've continued in 2022, is offering additional relief to residents up to $750 for hardship, as well as small businesses. And so with the credit program and those programs, we're very pleased with the overall response, and we hope to continue to seek out additional residents that may qualify, particularly in multi-unit apartments and things like that.
Thank you. I think you mentioned this a number of times in the presentation. Purchasing new vehicles for the department. We've spent the last couple of budget cycles talking about the difficulty of acquiring both vehicles and certain types of commodities for the department, and how that's had impacts on past budgets, given some of the supply chain constraints from the pandemic. We're sitting here in City Hall without masks on, sort of feel like pandemic to some degree is behind us. But I wanted to ask the department, because this has been a principal part of, I think, our budget discussions over the past several years. How has supply chain difficulties or other types of lagging effects in the pandemic impacting the budgets heading into next year that's been presented to council?
Councilmember Dorns, I would say that some of the biggest impacts that we're seeing and that we've accounted for in our 2023 budget are primarily focused on fuel, chemicals, and supplies and materials. We've also considered inflationary impacts on our capital projects, so that would tie back into the debt service component of the overall budget. We've seen some supply chain issues impact particular products. One example would be our advanced meter infrastructure project, where we're trying to get new meters to install in residents' homes that would have a remote read. So there's a chip in there that we've seen some supply chain delays. And so we're hoping, though, that we're starting to get some supply, but there definitely has been a lag, as you mentioned. And so we're kind of building up our inventories in order to deploy that program. We've seen some long lead times in a lot of our orders. We've seen some vehicles orders be canceled just because of supply chain and demand issues. And also, I'll make a final comment on interest rates. Interest rates, as far as in the capital markets and our financing, when we finance, long-term finance a lot of our capital projects, we've seen those increased pretty dramatically, and this is nationwide. It's not just here locally, that interest rates, and we've planned for that in our budget. We've increased part of our modeling. We've accounted for those increased interest rates.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Another question, somewhat related, as we sort of move out of sort of fiscal planning related to the pandemic. We had a number of situations where we deployed significant amounts of federal assistance to local customers that were behind on their water or sewer bills. Could you just give us sort of a updated status? Because obviously, if folks get behind and can't pay their water bill, that directly relates. Since this is an enterprise funded department here at the city, folks aren't paying their bills. We can't keep doing the things that we normally would. And I know one of the central focuses of the department had been to make sure that we were making sure that folks had, the basic services that they've come to rely upon, and use some of those federal resources to make sure that literally the water kept flowing, right? There weren't turnoffs. Just want to give you an opportunity to talk about where we're sort of at with that assistance, and what, if any, sort of budgetary impact that's had into this proposed 2023 budget.
Councilmember Dorans, we've been fortunate over the past couple of years to receive some additional assistance from the federal government through CARES and ARPA dollars. And so we structured our program around the receipt of those dollars. And to date, we have provided over $1.8 million in assistance through our residential program, as well as our small commercial program. So we're very happy to see the outcomes of those programs. Currently, what we're doing is also at this point in time working with Impact Community Action. We're working with them right now to design a new program to where, back to the low-income discount program, where we can get more people engaged through kind of a direct sign-up process. If somebody is eligible for HEAP, they go into facilities at Impact and they sign up. Then we would automatically get them signed up. If we can, they'd be eligible. HEAP eligibility is an eligibility requirement on our low-income program, so it's kind of a win-win. And we believe we'll be able to capture several thousand, hopefully, new folks into our program. So, again, at this time, as we draw those dollars down, in 2023, we're going to continue to focus on that credit program. So we're really excited about that in the first quarter of 2023.
Last question for you, Deputy Director. So obviously, one of the challenges I think across the city right now is providing those basic city services in which we have the right personnel to do that. It's a challenging hiring environment and retention environment for any employer, let alone a city this size of Columbus that provides as many services as we do. Could you talk about, when you look across the three different divisions, areas in which we're seeing changes in sort of personnel costs and as it relates to sort of a change in the labor costs right now?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Councilmember Dorans. We're seeing a lot of changes in labor, really on our technical side of our staff. A lot of folks that work out of our plants, electricians, a lot of the trades, basically, it really gets down to whenever we go out and we advertise for these positions, what kind of response are we getting? And how do we retain these employees? What can we do to retain them? What kind of work environment can we provide? Challenging work, skilled work. So we're finding that really is kind of our challenge right now, with a lot of other competing demands with other industries, trying to grab up folks from the trades group, because there's just such demand here locally for those types of positions. So I would say that would be we're focused on that. And plus, we've got, in our call center, as mentioned, that's one area where we get a lot of turnover there. That's hard work, and there's a lot of positions in there. And so we're always seem to be focused on getting the right people in those positions as well to stay on the phones and answer customer complaints and issues.
Thank you, Deputy Director. I don't have any additional questions for you at this time regarding the proposed budget for the Department of Public Utilities. I don't know if you have any other comments you'd like to make before I let you go.
No comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Director. With that, would love to transition into the Building and Zoning Services portion of our hearing. Deputy Director Lee, you're welcome to stay or take off depending on what your schedule allows. While I've been the chair of the Public Utilities Committee for many years. This is actually the first year I've been chairing the Department of Building and Zoning Services here at Council, so very excited to have both Director Messer and Fiscal Officer Eric Voorhees here tonight with us to go through this proposed budget. Wanted to, again, thank you both for the preparation for tonight's hearing and for making sure that we're doing our best to make sure that folks in the community understand how this budget relates to the services that your department offers. So with that, would love to turn it over to you, Director and Fiscal Officer Voorhees.
Well, good evening. Thank you, Councilmember Dorns, for the opportunity to present a summary of our 2023 budget for the Department of Building and Zoning Services. The 2023 budget for Building and Zoning Services totals just under $36 million. That's a 3% increase from 2022. It provides for 253 full-time employees and 6 part-time employees. Our department is organized into 5 distinct yet interconnected sections. You have the building department section, which does our plan review and inspections. All of our inspectors for construction are in that area. We have zoning, site engineering, code enforcement, and our customer intake services area. All these areas combine to ensure safe, quality development in the city. The activities are funded through 2 different areas for building and zoning. The areas funded through permitting and licensing revenues. Those are deposited into a development services fund. That totals approximately $28 million. We also have our code enforcement division, which is supported by the general fund, and that is the remaining approximately $8 million for our budget. The bulk of our budget for both building and zoning, including code enforcement division, is for personnel. Nearly 85% of our budget is used for staff. Other notable expenditures that we have include $2.7 million for technology-related expenses and approximately $435,000 for vehicles for our inspectors. The 2023 budget is essentially a continuation budget that's going to allow us to continue to streamline our processes for customers with more online access, expanding electronic plans review, improving the zoning process. I highlight that one because, as you know, we're conducting a comprehensive multi-year zoning code modernization effort. It's going to support equitable growth, affordable housing, transit, neighborhood vitality across the city for decades to come. We're really excited about that effort. We already have invested heavily completing phase 1 this year, and moving into 2023, we're excited to continue into phase 2 with a more robust update effort. We're really excited about this work and many other improvements that we continue to implement. Just to give you an idea, in recent years, we have moved the department largely to online digital access, with nearly 80% of our work being online and digitally submitted at this point. We're able to take millions and millions of documents, which we have digitized and scanned to make available into perpetuity electronically. So we're excited about that. And we just continue to make as many improvements as we can to implement and make our processes as smooth and efficient as possible. So thank you for your consideration of our budget request, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. So you alluded to this, but this was, I think, the first full year of code enforcement being within the department. Want to talk about, since we're talking about here the budget today, sort of the fiscal impacts of that. Has there been sort of any changes with code enforcement as a sort of, whenever you add a new responsibility to a department, there's going to be sort of that transition, and that transition can come up from a budgetary standpoint. I just want to pose the question to two of you, what, if any, sort of changes that you all have seen adding code enforcement, and anything you would see heading into the future as that part of the department sort of, for lack of a better term, sort of gets normalized?
Well, from a budgetary standpoint, as I mentioned earlier, the biggest change is just adding the general fund dollars, which support that code enforcement effort, to our budget. But the transition has gone very well. One advantage that we knew going into the move was a much, much more improved communication between the building inspectors and the code officers. There's a lot of overlap and efficiencies that we have realized. We've been able to implement a lot of different technological improvements to code enforcement, piggybacking on the things that we've done in building and zoning services. Having both areas combined, things such as the mere fact alone that prior to combining the code enforcement and building, code enforcement enforced the zoning code. So zoning violations out in the city were enforced and orders were written by code enforcement, but the actual administration of the zoning code fell under building and zoning services. So that inherently created a little bit of a disconnect, which we've been excited to combine those two areas to where now it's a little more cohesive, integrated effort. There's also many times when across the city when code enforcement and building and zoning are involved with problem properties, problem owners of properties who aren't taking care of their properties properly, and being able to have code enforcement and building in the same department has allowed us to unify those efforts to correct those problems across our city. We have been able to have some org structure changes, combine some areas, especially under the compliance area, and that has been very helpful. We've been able to streamline some things, and so we've been very excited. There's still more work to do. We are still considering some structural changes and efficiencies that we can realize going into next year, but so far, so good.
Thank you, Director. One of the things that I think sort of the early days of the pandemic, a lot of folks thought, construction development would just grind to a halt. Being a department that's primarily funded through fees that are associated with that development, a lot of concern about what that would do to your budget, what that would do, to the city, sort of, et cetera, et cetera. Wanted to sort of ask, we have not seen that, obviously, here in Columbus. We've seen, if anything, growth increase from the development side. Wanted to allow you an opportunity to talk about sort of the what you have seen over the past years, and as we're heading into this budget, obviously you're paying very close attention to what is raised from those fees in order to fund the department. Just in general commentary, thinking about again that sort of early concern that we're about to see things really fall off a cliff and not happening, and then sort of where we are today as it relates to obviously those types of activities help to make sure that the department runs, because without you all, that development doesn't happen and vice versa.
Yeah, Councilmember, thanks for that question. It has been, an interesting few years. 2020, certainly, we saw some dip in permitting volume and construction volume, which picked back up in 2021 to really get back to pre-COVID levels. 2022, we are even more robust than last year. So we've surpassed where we were prior to COVID. And as you've kind of mentioned, development never really stopped in the city of Columbus. We had, some dips in the early days of COVID, but since then have came on strong. If you look at where we stand today, I would tell you that we usually like to talk about zoning applications and pre-site plan engineering type applications. They're usually indicative of construction, 6 to 12 months down the road, and those are all at all-time highs in the city of Columbus. So, with the addition of Intel and some of the associated construction and development that's going on related to that, we expect development and construction to continue at very high levels in the city. Intel is going to have quite an impact, I think, on housing project starts as well as commercial areas and projects. So we are really feeling very excited and encouraged about where Columbus is headed in terms of development.
Thank you, Director. Similar question that I posed to public utilities earlier. Obviously, given the labor environment that we're in right now, and a lot of the positions within the Department of Building and Zoning Services being rather specialized, and certainly can't pull someone off the street and make them a planner the next day or anything like that. Wanted to sort of ask the question, thinking through this from a personnel standpoint, what, if any, impacts financially has been on the department, sort of the opportunity to talk about any vacancies that exist and sort of what the department's doing to try and make sure that, again, you're able to handle all those applications of permits that come through the door.
Sure. It's hard to talk about this as an advantage, but one advantage we had is even prior to COVID and prior to some of the workforce issues that a lot of people have been experiencing, as you mentioned, hiring a seasoned plans examiner who's an architect or an engineer or an inspector with, multi-years experience and a license. It's just not, you don't just, put an ad out and the next day you have someone in the position. So we have had to develop over recent years a pretty robust effort to sort of home grow those folks. And so we worked with the state building department who license all of our individuals to come up with some pretty unique and innovative training programs where we're able to hire people who aren't necessarily licensed yet, but instead of them getting the experience in the field, we train and provide education and knowledge to them in our department, and then they can progress through and get their licensure through the state. So we have been actively investing in what we call engineers in training, as well as sort of junior inspectors who aren't licensed, but they work with us for several years. And last year, we were able to push through 4 or 5 of those people into vacancies as they occur. So as we have vacancies and retirements, I guess the good news is we stand ready, usually with a sort of a group of folks that are ready to move up into those positions. Now, true, we do have to then backfill those jobs, but they're much easier positions to fill. We have great partnerships with Ohio State and some other universities and entities across the state that as people graduate, we're on site to work with them in various hiring job fairs and so forth. And we're able usually to recruit fairly easily. We go all the way back to high school. We have a great partnership with Fort Hays and the City of Columbus schools where, we get ourselves recognized and out there at a very young age for folks to, express interest possibly in a career with building and zoning. So we're very proud of those efforts and don't really have as many struggles right now with vacancies as maybe some other folks, but we stand ready.
Thank you, Director. I know you mentioned that this was mostly a continuation budget from prior years. So again, I just want to pause and allow you or the Fiscal Officer Voorhees, I don't know if there's any additional comments you'd like to make. I think those are all the questions I have for you all here tonight.
I think the only thing that I would mention, you talked about the construction industry and where we're headed and some high-level thoughts. Mm-hmm. While it's not necessarily for us, when you mentioned supply chain issues, I would just highlight that one thing that we are seeing quite a bit in the construction industry, not so much for my own department, but the construction industry really is struggling still with a lot of supply chain issues, a lot of challenges. We see projects get delayed. We see a lot of impact still on supply chain issues. And we're also doing everything we can to invest in the fact that we're going to need a lot more contract or building type employees. So your plumbing, your electrical areas, all of your mechanical folks. With Intel and everything else, there's going to be quite a drive for qualified construction industry folks, and we're doing everything we can to help support the industry in that.
Appreciate that. Want to thank the Department of Building and Zoning Services and certainly the Department of Public Utilities for being here tonight. Really appreciate all the work that's gone into proposing the budget that's before council tonight, and certainly the weeks ahead as council considers and amends the budget. Want to again thank council staff that were part of getting this hearing together, our folks from the Legislative Research Office that are assigned to these various committees, John Oswalt, Andrew Dyer, Matt Erickson, and again my staff, Andy McDonald and Kevin McCain, as well as Mark Carter and the team at CTV for making sure this hearing was broadcast out. If you're looking for more information on the proposed 2023 2023 operating budget. You can find that at columbus.gov/finance. If any members of the public have questions specifically about these two departments' budgets, you're welcome to email me personally at radorns, DORANS, at columbus.gov. And with that, want to wish everyone a good evening and look forward to 2023. Take care.
Thank you.